don't know if this has ever happened to you all, but last Monday, I had this deep, deep yearning to just go out and be in nature. I just needed to somehow hug a tree or something, right? Have you ever had that feeling where you just gotta get up and away up to the mountains or something, right? Well, Monday's my one day off a week, and so there's always lots to get done, but I was determined. I got everything done. I'm like, okay, well, I can't, don't have time to drive all the way up in the mountains, but I'll go to the Back Bay, right? You all know the Back Bay here in Costa Mesa. I love this place. I remember just as I drove up and my feet hit the ground and my whole body just sort of goes, oh. You hear the crunch as you walk along the paths. And even though there's the planes screaming overhead, but I saw just wonderful, birds flying. There was one, I must have been a hawk of some sort, that had a fish in its talons. It was flying off. It was just awesome. And I'm walking along the edge of the bluff for a while, and I get to one of those markers that they have there, because this is obvious, it's a reserve as well, and they've done so much to preserve this wonderful space in the middle of the city. And one of the markers, it says, one of those things that I'm going to teach you a little bit about what's going on here. And the marker says, humanity's impact on nature. And it showed in part a time when the estuary was strewn with garbage. Now, the sign sort of struck me in three ways. And the first was, humanity's impact on nature. Like, we're separate from nature? Like, somehow nature is not us. And that kind of gave me pause. And the second was that it showed not just garbage, but it actually also showed in another part of it all the conservationists, the people who would help heal this beautiful estuary. So humanity can have a positive impact. And then it made me want to ask the question, because of that feeling, that yearning I had in me, what's nature's impact on humanity? So out of all of that came this sermon today. And I have three questions for you this morning. How many people here would say, I love this earth? Okay? I'm not talking about the political systems, okay? I'm talking about the mountains, the trees, the flowers, the animals. How many people here would say, I love this earth? Yeah. Almost a no-brainer, right? So here's my second question for you. Do you think the earth loves you back? It's an interesting thing to contemplate. Our scientific minds might start responding like, well, no, the earth doesn't have a brain, it's not an entity like a person, but you think about it. This earth, this universe, it gives us all that we need to survive. It gives us food, it gives us shelter, it gives us oxygen. Shouldn't a good mother do that? She encourages us to grow strong and healthy. It shows us how to do that in the way that the seasons change, and the way that a seed becomes a tree, which begets flowers, which begets fruits. And is that not nurturing? Is that not love? So my third question is this: if you could set aside your scientific brain for just a moment and imagine that the earth does love us, wants to love us, is there for us. Here's my third question. How might you then treat the earth? These questions have been weighing on me. They're ones that Robin Kimmerer asks in her book, Braiding Sweetgrass. As I mentioned, she's a scientist, a botanist, as well as a member of the Potawatomi Nation, and she blends science and indigenous knowledge together. Indigenous ways of knowing are conveyed through stories, like our story about Sky Woman today, their creation myth. Stories are so important. They inform us on a very subconscious level about who we are and how we walk through this world. Now, I don't believe that Kimmerer actually thinks that Sky Woman fell from, the sky down to the ocean, any more than we might think that the earth was actually created in 6 days. But indigenous knowledge isn't about the scientific facts, per per se. It's about a different kind of truth that's told in story. So when our creation story, which is the creation story of many in this culture, is about people falling from sin, where we're cast out of paradise for simply wanting to understand from eating an apple, is it any wonder that we don't see ourselves in relationship with the earth as part of nature? We were cast out of it. We see ourselves as separate, as given dominion over. But what happens when our creation story is about falling gently onto the backs of geese, and then we're caught and held and loved by the creatures of this earth, and that together we created this? Might we not then see ourselves as part of nature, not apart from it? First People's stories here in America show us a different way of seeing the world. For example, in most Native American creation stories, humankind is not the dominant race. In fact, it's considered the youngest race that has the most to learn from all of the other races of animals and plants and trees and mountains. So that's how they approach the land and the animals, listening to what it has to teach. And isn't that the beginning of scientific inquiry? And in fact, it's not just the stories that convey a different worldview, but the language can as well. In Potawatomi, what we call things or nouns are often verbs. The word for mountain isn't, mountain, it isn't a thing. It's to be a mountain, to be a river, or to be a Saturday. In a culture where everything is alive and has being, everything is animate. Kimmerer says, language is that dwelling place of ideas that do not exist anywhere else. It is a prism through which we see the world. Now, we might not all want to go learn Potawatomi, but we can learn to see through that prism. Because here's the thing, we've got all of this in science, this incredible stuff, but it hasn't yet saved us from environmental devastation. In fact, it can make things worse. To change this course of climate change is going to take a whole new way of seeing our relationship in this world. And I think the indigenous people have something wonderful to offer us. Learning to hear the story of the earth and what it has to teach us rather than superimposing our own way of thinking is something that scientists are just now starting to do with these absolutely amazing results. We all love those Facebook videos, right? And some of you may have heard about how the wolves saved Yellowstone Park. Have you seen this video on Facebook? Some people have, some people haven't. Okay, so basically scientists have been learning about something called trophic cascade. It's an ecological process that starts at the top of the food chain and cascades down to the bottom. Back in 1995, gray wolves were reintroduced after a 70 years absence. 70 years ago, people were told to kill them off. They were interfering with people who wanted to be in the park. So for 70 years, deer, and elk increased and so reduced the vegetation through grazing. This even caused erosion around rivers and even deforested areas as bark was eaten. By introducing the wolves back in, they changed the behavior of the deer, which caused a cascade of effects like dominoes falling. Valleys became reforested, and so the birds and the beavers came back. Beavers created dams, creating homes for other animals. Wolves also killed some of the coyotes, so rabbits flourished, which in turn brought more hawks, weasels, foxes, and badgers. Berries increased, and so did the bears, and the rivers changed with less erosion, and they meandered less. It's absolutely amazing what we can do when we listen to the land, when we go back and we heal it. We Unitarian Universalists, we have in our seventh principle something that recognizes this, right? We call it interdependence. Our seventh principle says we affirm and promote the interdependent web of existence of which we are a part. A friend of mine wants to amend this. She wants to say, we affirm and promote the interdependent web of existence of which we are but a part, which I think is wonderfully more humbling. Now, we have this as one of our principles, but I don't know about you, but I'm just beginning to understand what interdependence means. I mean, I know that I didn't, make this jacket. I didn't, slaughter the cow that I'm eating, or I know that we are interdependent with one another, right? I get that kind of interdependence. But how does that translate to know how we take care of the earth? Because while the introduction of these wolves is really cool, it's only really solved some of the problems. There are plenty more. Yellowstone has had the warmest temperatures in 6,000 years. And that's changing the forests and the grasslands. There's fungi and beetle infestations that are causing the decline of native whitebark pine. And natural gas drilling is affecting migratory birds, and invasive lake trout is wreaking havoc on the ecosystem. There is so much work to be done, and that's just Yellowstone Park. I think part of what it means to have an indigenous mindset is to know the land so well that you know how to take care of it. And those of us whose ancestors immigrated here came from places where they knew that land. The Celts, the Sami of the north, the Gauls of southern Europe, the Ainu of Japan, every indigenous tribe in the world knows their own land. Not just the first peoples here in the Americas. My own indigenous ancestors are the Celts and the Sami. They knew how to take care of their land. The Celts, they sang songs each morning to the sun in gratitude, to the fire that they tended and the cow that they milked. As soon as a culture came along and said, you now have dominion over this land, like in the Americas, these songs and ways of knowing were almost wiped out. And all this to say, it's in our blood, in our DNA, to listen to the land as well, if we choose to. We are the descendants of those who knew how to listen to this earth. Because here's the thing, we've got all this science, and it's brought us so much travel, communication, medicines, but it's also distanced us from the earth. We've been left out a huge part of what it means to be human when we see science as a way to dominate rather than a way to listen and learn. If we want to become truly naturalized citizens of this earth, we have to change how we do things because the current way isn't working. And like Skywoman, most of us here are immigrants of some shape or form. People whose ancestors came from far away to settle here, but we haven't yet been naturalized. We sort of have a choice, as I see it. We Americans, we can be like kudzu, right? Kudzu was introduced, a vine that was introduced actually just to pretty things up. And it dominated, it ignored the boundaries, it comes in and destroys, it literally covers other plants and kills them. It's epidemic in the South. We can be like kudzu, or we can be like plantain. This has nothing to do with the bananas. But the plantain is found all over the world. It's actually called white man's footstep. It's found all over the world because it originally came from Europe, brought over by settlers, but it never dominates or kills other species. In fact, it provides medicine and food. It's often assumed to be native to North America. It's become naturalized. It's in harmony with the world around it. So which will we choose to be like? So I'm going to invite you today, for this coming year, to something really radical. I want you to live radical interdependence, as if we are in a relationship with this earth. Here are some things you can do. I've been doing this the last couple of days, and it's been changing the way I see the world. First, simply try to imagine that the earth loves you, that it wants you to flourish. It wants you to be in harmony with this earth. Try a meditation or just get up in the morning and feel the love of the earth and imagine it back to you. How do you think that might change you? Another example is try talking to the earth like a friend, and you're a guest that's visiting. What if we spoke to plants, spiders, and mountains? Not because we expect them to answer back, but because we recognize that they have an intelligence of their own, that they know how to do things we can't, like photosynthesis, weaving webs from their bodies or giving us diamonds and quartz. And for all that we can give thanks. Another thing you can do is start a ritual. Start each day with words of thanks to the earth. Remember our Thanksgiving address and our opening words? What if we just had words of thanks every morning that we started our day? I think of those kids starting every day in words of thanks and how powerful that might be. I started this morning, I went out and I gave a gift to the ground. I poured some water. Just a little thing. Kimmerer gives tobacco. I'm not a smoker, so I don't have any tobacco. This ritual of giving means that there's a reciprocity, that you're in relationship. So give something back to the earth, even if it's just something token, or pick up a piece of garbage that you see on the ground. Tokens of caring are important in any relationship. And how might that change us? Now, all of these ideas, I get it. They're a little wacky. They're a little woo-woo. You know, I get that. But what have we got to lose? Because what we're doing right now isn't working. Our earth is dying. I believe so strongly that if we're going to stop environmental devastation, it's going to be because we change how we view this beautiful earth and our relationship to it. And it begins with each one of us being in a relationship. So I invite you to activate your own indigenous DNA and see the world differently. I believe only then we can become truly naturalized citizens of this earth. I dare you. I double dare you. Blessed be and amen.